Chances are, if you've been looking for an ND Miata, you've seen our review on this in the past. We are not going to go over all the little details again. That would be unsatisfactory. However, this new RF does have some neat additions that we're going to cover in better detail. The front end. You're thinking to yourself, Blake, I can't see anything different about it. That's because there's nothing different here. It's the same ND Miata. So we're just gonna skip over all that and we're gonna stroll along to the back. The back end. This is what's been resculpted to fit this motorized Targa-ish top on the back. Now, the one thing about it is, it looks amazing. It looks amazing for the price point, what they've been able to do here. They've had to make some changes though, to the rear quarter, the rear deck lid, to this top section, of course, and you know, it's adding weight. And I can't tell you how many times I made this top go up and down. I just raised and lowered it, and raised and lowered it, and I've looked at the gears, I've looked at the assemblies, and I think to myself, now that is cool looking. And then I thought to myself, how about after 10 years? And I would say to myself, it won't be so cool when it breaks. Now, that said, the level of complication here, you can see that they've tried to consolidate the parts. This isn't something that is overly engineered. As I get on the inside of the RF, it's pretty clear to me this isn't as open feeling as the typical Miata convertible, and that's because it's not. These pillars become a massive blind spot for you. It feels more Lotus Elise than Miata, and that's just by design. That it is a big trade-off here, having these pillars. You really only have this level of roof around you, and to me, it kind of clouds the driving experience. Now, of course, I'm going to say this a couple times in the video, Mazda has said this is designed for people that don't really put the top down that much. And it makes sense. You kind of have a little bit of, well, the best of both worlds. You can kind of have the open top experience, but most of the time you're going to have this up, which makes it more of an all-weather car. Now, I made a call to my buddy Peter Delaplane. He used to be a car designer or an owner of a car company, and he said, what's the interior like here? Tell me about it because I'm thinking about getting back in the business. First things first, it's the same interior that we saw in the regular Miata. This car has this tri-tone interior, and it's tri-tone because it carries the exterior color on the inside, the black interior, and then the tan on the dash, and of course the seats. I would just go for all black because this is strange to me, but again, it's going to be up to you if you like it. The second thing that it adds is, of course, the top operation button, the up and the down. And some people complain, well, it's kind of reversed. To me, it's just kind of intuitive. If I want to push the top back, I push it up. If you want to lower it, you push it down. A lot of people get confused by it. I don't know. It's one of those things you get used to, but something to note. Really, other than that, this is the same interior space that we've been used to. The same complaints I have are here. There's not enough storage. The center console storage is wimpy, and it's on an incline. You can't really fit modern phones. Your center armrest area is very compromised. There's literally no storage in there. All the storage is behind you. And from a driving perspective, well, that's pretty annoying. The second thing that I have a problem with is the passenger interior space, or passenger space in general. It's smaller than the driver's space. And I know this is more for a driver, but your passenger is going to suffer a little bit because they've skewed the room here for me, for the person behind the wheel. Now, there's a couple things that are wrong with the interior with the RF that get introduced, and at least to me, this car has a lot of wind buffeting. And it doesn't matter if you take this wind deflector off behind me. I've tried it on and off. It just doesn't seem to be any different. With the windows up, I notice a lot more like wind noise than I did on the regular Miata. And again, this is something you just have to play around with yourself and check. It might be totally acceptable to some, but to me, it's just a touch annoying. You know, my girlfriend Melina just called. She said, if you're not home by 6 to watch Hoarders with me, well, don't bother coming home at all. So that's why we're gonna go right now into the shop to take a look at all the nuts and bolts of the Miata RF. We're in the shop, and this is a little bit different format because, again, we've already done this car. Now, we put this on the alignment rack. Scott, why is that?
Because it's only rack available, and I figured why not slap the heads on?
Yeah, since we're on here, and like Scott said, it took literally 5 minutes to put the heads on to check the alignment. We're going to show you the alignment specs for this RF Miata. Now, keep in mind that this car has probably been through some severe duty. I don't know if it saw track time, autocross, who knows? I haven't done it. Well, technically I did do autocross, and it might have been on this car. So it's nice to see what the alignment specs are from a factory car. I was at the Mama Press Rally a month ago when you were on your vacation to all the Apple stores. The Mama Press Rally is where all the Midwest journalists get together at Road America. All the manufacturers bring their cars for us to drive on the track at Road America, drive on the street, take the trucks off-roading on an off-roading course, and then they have, on the second day, an autocross, where the 100 journalists that are there compete for the fastest time. And certain vehicles were on the autocross track to sample. And you could only drive each car once. So,
oh, you didn't get a second chance?
No, you didn't get a second chance. And I hadn't been in this car for over a year, well, maybe less than a year, really driving it. So I got in the Miata, and the first thing I did was set the fastest time of the day by a pretty good margin. And the best thing about it is this thing makes you feel so comfortable. And that's really the most fun part about this car. There's no really adjusting to it. You get in it, you drive it flat out, and it just does whatever you want it to do. It doesn't particularly understeer, doesn't particularly oversteer. It's just so fun to pilot. So let's take a look at that clip. So now that you've seen that clip, Scott, I hate to rain on the parade.
I haven't seen the clip.
Well, you saw it. Don't pretend like you didn't see it.
I thought it was the Volkswagen you sent me.
Yes, that's what I want to rain on the parade about. Unfortunately, right after that, I got in the VW Golf R and ran the true fastest time of the day, which won, and I wound up being the fastest out of all the journalists. So, wow for me.
Yeah, well, I'm surprised they didn't bring your trophy.
I know, I should have had the trophy. I'm sorry I don't, but here's the thing. People said, wow, that Golf R is really fast. And I got out of it, and I would put that thing in the junkyard compared to driving this. I don't care if it's slower, and that's the point. It is slower, but it's far more fun to drive.
It's more funner.
Yes. Scott, we are under the...
I thought we weren't going under the car.
We weren't going under the car, but this is really the whole part of this. The big thing to note about the Miata in general is, for the price point, you find nothing like this. You have to go really into high-end sports cars to see this level of adjustability, thought to aluminum, lightweight. The only thing that this is kind of missing is aerodynamics. They don't have a completely flat underbody, but it is really, really good.
You don't need it.
No, I don't think so either. But just, I think that's the biggest thing to note. When you look at the underneath of this Miata, you have adjustable camber toe in the back. You have camber, caster, and toe adjustment in the front. Now this is the Touring Edition, so you don't get Bill Stein dampers, you don't get the higher spring rates, you don't get BBS wheels, and you don't get Brembo brakes. But if you're just somebody that's putting this around on the street, this is more than adequate because, as you're going to see soon, the curb weights are ridiculously low for a modern car. You have aluminum control arms, you have just attempts all over the place to curb weight. What do you got there, Scott?
It's my iPad.
No, it's not.
I was looking for the nearest Apple store.
You've already been there. Let's talk about the Longacre hybrid scale system, Scott. Wired scales, tablet information. So we put the RF Miata on the scales. What's our total curb weight?
2437. It's pretty light.
Yeah,
It's pretty good.
real good. 50-50 weight distribution, bro.
No, it's not.
Your cross weight is 50. Your front and rear is 50. That's ridiculous.
It's not 50.
It's 49.79.
That's, yeah.
For a production car, that's crazy. Welcome to the world of the RF Miata. And in the case of the RF, I can tell you one thing. This does feel almost like a coupe, I'm not gonna lie. It's a great opportunity for somebody that doesn't want the soft top experience to drive it around, pound it around all year round, and enjoy the experience of the Miata without kind of the harshness and the noise that the soft top creates. Now, when driving around, normally you don't get all the cowl shake feeling that you get with the top down. It feels pretty solid. You know, if you're coming out of a kind of a sports car that's not a convertible and you get into this, you're gonna notice it right away. It's not the most rigid feeling experience. But when you're driving hardcore, a lot of that, you just get adapted to the way that the car feels. And it's a really planted, confidence, inspiring experience. One of the best parts about the Miata experience is you can just drive this at 100% all the time on the street and not worry about losing your life or being locked up, because it's just perfectly suited for daily driving. From ride comfort to steering to acceleration and fuel economy. And I think that's one of the best parts about this. And I hate to mention fuel economy when you're talking about kind of a fun to drive performance car. I'm getting 32 to 33 miles to the gallon all the time, and that is just amazing. If I got into a car like the Alpha where I beat it around all the time, I was lucky to get 13 miles to the gallon. In fact, I filled that car up every single day I drove it. That's how much fuel I burned. Here, I can just go flat. And I'm barely breaking the speed limit, and I'm having a ton of fun. And I think that's the biggest selling point of this car, and why I would recommend it to somebody that's been through a lot of cars, you've experienced high horsepower cars on the road, and you're looking for something a little bit more practical, something you don't have a ton of running costs with. And that's what this is all about. You don't have to do jack shit to this car, and it's super efficient. It's so neutral that you always know what's happening, and even when it starts to lose its rear end, it's a total non-issue. You can go through gravel. There's just not enough power here to get it upset. But that's also the Achilles heel of the driving experience, because if you're somebody that hasn't experienced a lot of higher horsepower cars, you may think that this is kind of a chump. It's a slouch experience. And when you look at the horsepower numbers, and I know Mazda as a company hates to talk about horsepower in this car, but at 150 horsepower, it's not a lot. And this is not a fast car. And I think that's what's going to detract so many people. And it's not just the speed. I can live with the fact that it's 150 horsepower because it's such a good driving car. The trans is so good. The performance, the chassis is good. But the problem, and my biggest problem with this car overall, is you have a naturally aspirated motor, which I love, but it's not a naturally aspirated motor that revs. The fuel cutoff is right around 6,900 to 7,000 RPMs. Just when you feel like you want this thing to start going, you're into the rev limiter. And it's such a drag on the overall experience of the car. But everything else is so well suited for the street to have fun. You can autocross this car. You can throw a sticky set of tires on here, go get a good alignment, just have fun without spending a ton of money. And that's why you buy this car. If you get it and you get all these things and you've been through ownership of a ton of cars already, you keep coming back to this vehicle as one of the best sports cars pretty much ever made at this point.